how to
Okay, Liv. Hello, ladies. Hello, everyone. Good morning, Canada, and good afternoon, Europe. Welcome to our broadcast. My name is Julia Fominova, and I'm the founder of the Human Rocks project. And the activity of the project is aimed at raising awareness about the problems of childlessness in the society in general and in the workplace in particular. And we aim at drawing attention to the challenges and troubles of childless people that they can experience in our mostly pronatalist world, as well as to the unjust attitude towards childless employees by choice or by chance, demonstrated by their colleagues and the management, sometimes, very often. Today, we've gathered here on a YouTube channel of Human Rocks to speak about it, and our today's event is entitled Childless People in the Society and in the Workplace. It's a really huge topic that we'll only be able to unveil a little bit today, but I hope that due to the work of our experts and of the organizations that started to appear, luckily, lately, aimed at supporting childless people in the society, unlike a decade ago. So I hope that we'll see this topic raised again and again until we start seeing very significant changes. There's already a lot that's been done by the organizations, and we'll speak about one of them today, the Gateway Women, and I will ask Karin to share the progress. This is a global organization, so I hope that there will be many more of them, and I hope also to contribute to this activity. In the description box later, I will add some helpful resources resources for those grieving their childless life and longing for creating meaningful life again, eventually. And I remind our followers that you can ask questions and post comments while we are talking. And I would like to give a warm welcome to our today's guests, who are experts in this very important matter, and I'm looking forward to them sharing their experience and the results of their work. So Karin Enfield is the Operations Director of Gateway Women, which is an international support network for childless not-by-choice women. Galina Boiarintseva, the Management Assistant Professor at Niagara University in Canada. Hi, Galina. Cecilia Rebild from Denmark. Cecilia is an HR expert and advisor with multiple years of experience. And we'll have Sharlene Premich from Canada. Sharlene is an advocate and educator for childless employees. And I'm Julia Fominova from Human Rocks. I'm based in Italy, and I'm the host of our today's event. Our guests will speak on 3 topics, and these are childlessness as a stigma in the society, helpful resources for childless women, and in particular, I'll ask Karin to speak about the activities of Gateway Women Network, childless employees' challenges and practical cases of change-making in the workplace. Cecilia and Sharlene, I'm really looking forward to ask about your experience raising these important topics. About the HR policies overlooking the interests of childless employees. I know that wasn't easy at all for you. And the third topic is dual career childless couples, implications work and family-wise. This was one of the fields of study of undertaken by Galina, and also Galina has studied the issues of childless employees in the workplace, and the findings are quite interesting. So without further ado, let's get started. Karin, your topic today is really, really huge. So what kind of attitude do we observe in the society towards childless people, childless for various reasons, and there are a lot of them, and what's the stigma about them that reigns among those who are parents?
Thank you so much, Julia, and a big warm welcome to everybody. My name is Karin Enfield, and as Julia already said, I am the Operations Director for Gateway Women, which is a global support and friendship organization that supports women who are permanently childless, not by choice or by circumstance, and who are looking to get support and friendship in the grief that often follows the conclusion of being childless in modern day society. And Julia, thank you for having me on this live stream. It's incredible to be
Thank you
here
for being here.
with other women as well to talk about this topic. And the stigmatization of childless people in society, it's a real big topic. I think that could be, a live stream in itself that could go on for hours on end, I think. But for me personally, I've been childless now for 9 years. I was diagnosed with cervical cancer at the age of 33, which left me childless following the treatment I received for that diagnosis. Fortunately, I'm fully back healthy, but I am indeed, because of it, I am a childless person. And any hopes or any dreams I had of any alternatives of becoming a mother other than biologically, they turned out not to be an option. So I had to deal with the fact that even though I was only 33, I was already childless. And well, people around me, friends, family, co-workers in the workplace, kind of, had a different life path than I undertook in my 30s. So the stigmatizations that I kind of I was faced with is that I was too much focusing on my career, that I was probably a career woman because people who did not know my background or did not know my story automatically assumed that because I had a career, it was chosen, and that's why that I wasn't a mother because I preferred my career over that. So that was a big stigmatization already in the workplace, very fitting to the topic of today, that I had to deal with. And also the stigmatization of not being a mother has also kind of influenced how people think of my abilities to care for others, to care for myself, that I am very likely to be a rather selfish person. That's another big stigmatization that I was faced with. Like I said, also not very caring, not very understanding of what it's like to raise children. I've actually been told by one person once that, oh, what do you know? You don't have children, so you can't even talk about this topic. And it was just a general topic about how to take care of a family member. So those are just a few things that I can already mention here today that I've been dealing with. And there is so much more that we can talk about, but I really would like to stay on topic of the workplace topic of today. But yeah, so I'm really happy to be here, and I hope this already has given you all some insights in some of the stigmatizations that we are faced with.
Yes, thank you, Karin. Thank you for sharing your personal story. I hope that this example will help other women start being more open about it, because until we are silent, we don't go anywhere. Karin, I would like to ask you specifically about the Gateway Women support network. What do you do? How did it start? What changes do you observe along the way?
Well, Gateway Women was founded by the incredible Jody Day. She is the author of the book Living the Life Unexpected, which is a fantastic book. And she writes in that book about how she found a plan B as a childless woman. And Gateway Women actually started as a blog written by Jody, like I said, the founder of Gateway Women, back in 2011, where she wrote about her experience of being a childless woman in her early 40s back then. And she just kind of shared how she was dealing with all the emotions that she was experiencing. And that blog, I think overnight it just hit the internet, and it became a trending blog in the childless community across the world. And I think from there, the desire and the urge to connect as childless women on a global scale kind of started from there. So gradually it grew into the network that it is today, and we have a worldwide reach in total of 2 million women worldwide. And in our online, we are now an online community away from Facebook, away from prying eyes of public communities. So we have a private ID checked community where anybody who wants to become a member of our community their IDs are being checked, just to make sure that we don't have any unwanted guests in our online community, so that it is actually a safe space for women who are going through the grief process of being childless, not by choice or by circumstance. And it's an incredible community, and there's a lot going on in the community. We have various subgroups on different topics. Again, the workplace, childlessness in the workplace is one of the groups that we have in our online community. And next to the online community, we also facilitate workshops online and in person. We organize gateway gatherings, as we call them, which are regional or local, I should say, gatherings where women who are childless, not by choice or by circumstance, can meet with other women who are in that same situation in person. Of course, with the pandemic, everything moved online, but as the world is slowly opening up again, we are hoping to go back to in-person meetings soon as well. So it's been a life-changing community for me. And we often call it the club that nobody wants to be a member of, because nobody thought that we would live this life, the unexpected life, as Jody calls it. But yet here we are, and for me, it has been it's been life changing. It's been just knowing that you're not alone with everything that you're going through, everything that you're faced with, comments you get at work, comments you get from friends and family, and realizing actually that what you're feeling is actually grief. And knowing that you're not alone with that has actually been instrumental for my healing journey and to get to the point where I am today.
Yeah, it's very important to know that there are others like you experiencing the same problems. And I know the book of Jody. I read it, the previous edition, and Jody's talk, TEDx talk, made a big change for me personally. I found it by chance on the internet, and that was like a revelation for me that there are others like me, and she just voiced the feelings that I had in that short talk, and that was a turning point for me as well. So thank you. We will list the site of Gateway Women Community among the resources after our broadcast. So hopefully the women who still don't know about this very helpful resource will get to you and get help. And Sharlene, I know that you are. Thank you, Karin. Sharlene, I know that you are an active member of this community, and also the member and the creator, if I'm not mistaken, of the Workplace Changemakers group. No, not the creator, but the member, of course, right? And we'll talk about it in a short while when we come to our next topic dedicated to childless employees and what it can be done for them in the workplace. And now I would like to ask Cecilia. I know that in Denmark, a documentary has been recently created that touches upon the topic of childlessness. Can you tell us about it? What's the main idea? And I would like you to also share a couple of words about your article about the issue.
Yes, of course. And thank you again for being part of this. It's very interesting, and I also already know Karin from the Gateway Women, and that has been very much a life-changing event for me as well to be part of that. I just a quick story about myself. I'm childless not by choice, and we made the final decision to stop fertility treatments 7 years ago, and I did then last year an essay and a column in one of our national newspapers about making that decision, which was one of the most difficult decisions in my life, because I wanted to keep pushing on. And when do you ever say stop? Because that means saying stop to the thing you always wanted to be and thought that I would be, to motherhood. So I wrote an article or a column that was published about how it feels being not a mother, not a parent in a community, a society that celebrates parenthood. And I think it talks very much related to what Karin just said about the stigma. And I gave examples about being excluded from normal talks at the workplace. I used examples from Corona times and the pandemic about you cannot talk about how it is to homeschooling, for example. You cannot talk about celebrations of your child. And as Karin also said, it's if you start talking about this, your point of view is more or less not valid because you have not experienced it. So I think the whole stigma and the whole I look very much want us to. I want us that we don't feel as excluded anymore. And I think, as Julia said in the beginning, this feeling of feeling excluded will disappear if more of us stop being silent. And that was what I wanted to achieve and start. And we got some talk about this in Denmark in the autumn, and actually more and more talk is happening here at the moment. Just today or yesterday, a book was published, a novel was published about the topic. So that's very interesting to see that things are actually moving in the right direction. People are less and less scared of talking about the situation, which is really great. And more, and I've been contacted, I think, by both students of anthropology and psychology the last couple of months who want to make studies into how it is to be childless, permanently childless. So that is also interesting. There's a lot of research by young students about this topic at the moment. And I think the documentary, it came about because of my article, or not the documentary, but me and my husband participating in it. So the documentary has a different angle into it, but it has an angle about chemicals and how chemicals impact us in our society. So the headline for it is "We the Guinea Pigs," and the documentary will be showed at different European national television channels in the fall. So both at BBC and the German ZDF and Swedish national television and Danish as well. So they interviewed two permanently childless couples among me and my husband, and also a young woman who has breast cancer, because the hypothesis is that more and more people actually have cancer because of influences by chemicals, and also a young mother of a young child who has a diagnosis with lack of concentration. And what we talked about, me and my husband, was about our life, again, to get knowledge about how it is to be childless not by choice. So we talked about the grief, but we also talked about what kind of joys we now find in our lives, because we didn't want to be the ones that are pitied, because I think that happens also then. Then we are looked upon somebody that you have to pity. If you look in drama and in films and novels and so on, then we're the ones that are pitied, the weird ones and so. And I don't think we're the weird ones. We're different because we're not parents. But we talked about our grief, we talked about our joys, we talked about how our life is today. And we also talked about, again, the exclusion, how the exclusion is in every most of the things we actually experience in our lives. So we have many friends who have children. So when we go to dinners and parties and so, there's always things that we feel excluded from. We cannot participate in the normal talk and so. So I thought it was simply a general talk. And at one point I can actually say that I'm a bit scared about telling my story that broadly, that will appear in different TV channels in Europe, because it feels very scary. And this feels scary as well because Julia introduced us as experts. I don't feel like an expert. I'm an expert on my own life, but and now I'm starting to write more and more about this topic. And as a good friend said, what we're doing right now is gentle activism. So I think that's it at the moment.
Yes, thank you, Cecilia. I think, I hope, and I believe that this gentle activism will lead to great results. And Cecilia, don't go away. And I would like to ask you the following question regarding our next topic. And it's about the situations that childless people, childless employees may live at work, and about the attitude, sometimes really unjust attitude from colleagues and managers. And I know that you have some experience in bringing about this issue before the HR department. Can you share this experience?
Yes, of course. So I have this, and I think it's somehow a double role, which I found it difficult to play because I am childless, not by choice. But I've also been sitting for many years in HR roles where I've been part of making policies and procedures and so. And maybe thirdly, I've been a leader myself of teams. And I think I've seen many unjust situations where I've been becoming better at actually being open about when they are unjust. For example, when I was leading the team I lastly led, I would experience sometimes that actually some of the young men would leave because they would have to go and pick up their children, and we were in the middle of a tough deadline for delivering a project, and then some of the women who did not have children would just have to stay. And we actually had some good talks about it, but they were somehow surprised because they didn't sense what was going on at all. So the whole thing actually about bringing it to the table and having a good talk about it. And I've actually started having talks about, because it seems like it's like you have a red card and you can just leave whenever you need to leave because you have children, and that red card we don't have as non-mothers or childless, not by choice.
And we don't have lives.
Yeah, as we don't have lives. And what the conversation that I'm now having with the childless people, because now I've started having these kind of conversation, is that you just say you need to go as well, because of course you have a life as well. So just leave and just say that I need to go. You don't need to have an explanation, but like the others just rush out, sometimes you need to rush out as well. Of course, there's sometimes things we need to do, but is this whole thing about it just leaving and being left back? It's not that becomes very unjust. And I myself have not been in a situation where you need to, for example, plan for holidays and so on. But I know at many workplaces that causes a big issue, because then you expect and you say that those who don't have children need to take the holidays and so. And of course, it should not be like that, because we have our lives that matter just as much as anybody else's lives. And then what has been really interesting, actually for me at least, is that the last year throughout the pandemic, we at my previous workplace we made new policies about how we act both as leaders as employees during the pandemic. So what we addressed, for example, was with all the regulation about whether to stay at home or actually be able to be allowed to go into the office, because we had some room for flexibility whether people could actually go into the office. And instead of saying, well, all those who are tired of being at home because they have children at home, then they can go, we actually tried giving different examples. So I didn't actually raise childlessness as an issue, but I raised diversity as an issue, and having really many different situations of diversity. Because I think what we actually, maybe that's a specific situation for Denmark, but in Denmark, many people are quite alike. And we don't have a huge degree of diversity. We have in some ways, but in other ways, people are quite similar here. So, but then we actually started coming up with many different examples of personality types and different kind of lives. And that somehow also opened up for the managers, that it became much easier to talk about what is actually what you need. And how does that align with what we need during the pandemic and with the work we need to do? So I think for me also, as having the double role of both being childless and being the one who sometimes make the procedures, it was easy for me to say, but we all need to be there with all our different needs, and of course with the company's needs as well.
Absolutely.
So that was, and it was interesting how well it was actually received. So in some way, I think about it as the way you sometimes think about is it wasn't stereotypes, but sometimes in marketing you think about these different kind of personality types, and that was a bit what we tried, but we just opened it more up.
Yes, thank you, Cecilia. I like how you presented. It's more like not diversity issue, but more like inclusion issue.
Yes.
So we have to include this category into the policies, other than make a diversity, introduce a diversity concept, trying to stress the differences rather than the differences. Will look for something that is in common. And that's the right approach as I see it. And Sharlene, as I mentioned earlier, you are member of the Workplace Changemakers group under the Gateway Women Network community. And you also had some experience in change making in the workplace with respect to the interests of childless people. Can you share your experience?
Sure. How's my sound? I had a little bit.
It's perfect.
Okay, perfect. We had a little bit of a sound issue before starting, so I'm glad to hear that the sound issue has gone away. Thank you very much. It's great to be part of this panel. Thank you, Julia, for putting it together. And as you mentioned, I am a member of Gateway. And I've been a member for just over a year now. And just like Cecilia and Karin, it has been life-changing for me to be part of a community of other childless individuals. And we can share our joys and our sorrows and our experience of being childless. And when I started with Gateway, there is a subgroup, or there's a topic within Gateway called workplace and career. And so that topic is a place for people just to talk about anything related to their experience of being childless in the workplace. And some of it is just venting and, just those experiences that we talked about, that feeling of exclusion. And really it's this huge blind spot, just the fact that we don't even really exist, that the assumption is that every employee is a parent, and that's the default assumption. And so I guess I have been on my own personal journey around coming out, so to speak, as a childless person in the workplace. And I have been at my workplace for 15 years. So I've been a long-standing employee, fairly well-known, and, I'm a part of a bunch of different committees. And over that 15 years, I've had personal challenges that I've just kept to myself. I haven't said anything, I've sucked it up. And I actually tried just to blend in by talking about my nieces. So that I tried to fit in by talking about 2 children in my life that are very dear to me. But it was my own way of coping and trying to fit in. And it really didn't acknowledge my own personal experience and my own personal journey. And so it was really through the process of being part of Gateway that I started to challenge that internally first, shed my own sense of shame, honestly. And where do we get shame about being childless? Like, where does that come from? We absorb it through various subtle or not so subtle messages in society. And so my own process of facing and shedding my own internalized shame enabled me to be able to start to have conversations. I started with a conversation with my manager, who was a Black woman. And so it was actually through her conversation, her diversity experience, and we have a very good rapport. And so I was able to share what my experience was being an invisible minority. She's a visible minority. And so it was actually through that connection and that ally within my workplace that I was able to be brave enough to write an open letter to my own diversity and inclusion. And so it was through my own personal journey that I I guess there used to be a Gateway subgroup called the HR Huddle, and it was through sort of more and more people like myself within Gateway saying, hey, you know, we really want to see changes in the workplace, that we resurrected this private group, this other group, and it's really dedicated for those Gateway members who identify themselves as wanting to be change makers in the workplace, want to make a difference, want to be more vocal, who are far enough into their grief journey to be able to do that. Because I tell you, the process is hard. And it's not, I keep saying my catchphrase is, it's not for the faint of heart, because you go through a bit of a roller coaster of exposing yourself. You get various reactions to it, some really positive, like amazing reactions, I gotta say, and some not so much, right? And so it's that beginning phase of trying to have, I believe it is a diversity issue. So I believe we are different. We are a minority in society. And yet I also very much think it is an inclusion issue too. So I do believe it's both and I do think my own personal experience is that I am wanting to highlight that there are all kinds of non-parents in the workplace. All kinds, right? There are yet to be parents that are going to end up like us, like the child. My preferred label for myself is childless by circumstance. I'm single and I'm childless, so my journey is different than Cecilia and Karin, and we all have various stories that get us here. And, you know, I did a talk last week in the workplace, and I really talked about all non-parents, right? There are young people who want to be, there are young people who don't want to be a parent. There are people who are in that trying phase. And there are people like me who've reached middle age, or I'm 55, people, there you go. There's my age. I'm pretty transparent. And you've reached my stage in life, and it's just like, no, it's not going to happen. And I'm devastated because I really wanted to be a parent. And so then I take my piece and I educate around my personal piece of the non-parent story in the workplace. So that's been my personal trajectory. And, you know, within this change makers subgroup, we're all supporting each other and sharing what works, what doesn't work, cheerleading, so that when we do a talk in the workplace and we have, you know, like me, I felt really sad after I did that talk, and I was able to post about it, and I was able to get really a lot of support from people identifying with that. And you know, and so it helps you through that roller coaster as you're stepping out and, you know, using Jodi's term, we're shedding our invisibility cloak. You know, the Harry Potter term, we're saying, guess what? I'm here. And this is what it's about. And my, you know, in my letter to the Diversity Inclusion Committee, my goal, and I believe a lot of the change makers have very similar trajectories with this, which is we want to educate, you know, because I think that people are well-intentioned. They just don't know what they don't know. And it's just like, I want to educate them. I want to say, like, I did a whole cheat sheet in the aftermath of my talk, what to say, what not to say. Here you go. Like, there you go. This is how to help us. This is what to say to us and not to say to us, right? Raise awareness, promote fairness in language and policies, you know, and equity across the organization. Like my particular organization has ill dependent days. So we have sick days for employees. And then there's a whole other subgroup of days for ill dependents. Why not make it personal obligation days, right? As a single person, I have personal obligations that no one else can do. So that's an example, again, of a fair policy that doesn't take away from parents. Like, we're not here to pit parents against non-parents. We just want to broaden the conversation to include us and to say, hey, we're a voice were a force that actually are going to add to the parenting policies, actually, right? When we look at miscarriages and, bereavement days for miscarriages and, fertility treatments and, all those things that are there that could have supported me in the process that just didn't exist, and I think could have supported some of the other things like you. So really, it's about, and it's like my letter also said that I want to promote and lead in innovation, right? This is on the fringes, but in Canada, family status is a protected human right. Is it ever on the radar screen? No, right? Cecilia, Galina's in Canada too, right? And she's like, absolutely not. It's not on the radar screen, right? So that's what I'm trying to do within my workplace. This is, guess what? We're not talking about this yet, but we will be, because we're not going to be silent anymore, right? And so I've had a lot of comments from my body size, like, people make comments like, oh, you have a flat stomach because you haven't been pregnant, right? And people think it's okay to say that. And, those are the kinds of things like, oh, you're so lucky you don't have children. Oh, you don't have to worry about kids, right? To call us lucky and to call us, fortunate. And it's just, honestly, it's not mean-spirited. It's just a real lack of awareness of our trajectory. And the assumption is if you don't have kids, you wanted that, or you didn't try hard enough, right? Those are kind of the common booms that we get. Bingos, Jody calls them. But
yeah. And Jody also says that our society doesn't really know how to treat grief, what to do with those people who are grieving. Right, Karin?
And that's what I said last week to my group. I just said, and Jody used the term grief literacy. We are grief literate. Like, we know how to do grief. And I've, what I said to the group last week was like, invite me. I'm happy to speak about all kinds of grief and locate this piece of grief in the disenfranchised category, which is you just don't really recognize it as valid, or that it's as a recognized type of grief that one can grieve a dream, can grieve a family you didn't have or don't have, right? And so it's just teaching people about disenfranchised grief, teaching people about what that means, and that this is a piece of that, and how we can help people learn how to not just deal with this type of disenfranchised grief, but all different types of disenfranchised grief, right? So.
Exactly. Karin, would you like to add to this?
Yeah, sure. And thank you, Sharlene, for explaining so wonderfully what it is indeed that change makers in the workplace do, because it is indeed a very vulnerable position to put ourselves in. I've also done it when I was still, I'm self-employed since early this year, but before that I had a 21-year-long corporate career in various multinational, international organizations, where I also jumped on the bandwagon to talk to HR managers about diversity and inclusion, because I actually think I agree with both what Cecilia said and what Sharlene said, is that yes, it is a diversity issue, but it's also very much an inclusion issue. So for me, it is really about the diversity and inclusion of childless employees in the workplace. And Sharlene, I love how you just mentioned as well that we are not out to put parents in a bad daylight. We are actually, what we want to do is want to broaden the conversation to make sure that every employee, regardless of whether you are single, married, partnered or not, whether you have children or you don't have children, for whatever reason, whether you qualify yourself as child-free or childless or happy as a parent, that should not matter. What should matter is that the discussion that we have with each other in the workplace about, for whatever reason, I need to leave early, or for whatever reason, I do want to go on holiday in the height of summer. I don't, but should that be my desire? I don't want to be excluded from the conversation just because my colleagues or my manager makes the assumption that, oh, Karin doesn't have children. Oh, she won't want to go on holiday during the school breaks. So that is an experience I've had personally in my workplace a few years ago, where we were talking about the summer holiday planning. And this happened to me. I was not included in that conversation. So I came to work and people came back from a meeting and said, oh, what was the meeting about? Oh, holiday planning for the summer. I was like, hi, I work here too, right? I'm a part of this team, yeah. But you don't have kids, so you don't need to worry about school holidays. Well, you know, and it's just those little things that make me feel not included in the policy. So this is actually, you know, I've given this example to my HR manager as well, well, my then HR manager, and I've also sent, you know, I've sent emails to the policymakers in the workplace, also now from my role as operations director for Gateway Women, and there's a really brilliant example, and I'll happily share that with you all afterwards, that how the Bristol University in the UK, they have done an amazing piece of work about creating an inclusive and diverse policy for childless people in the workplace, and it's been an absolute success story. And it's publicly visible, so I'll happily share the link to that work that they've done there as well. And I remember when I shared that with the policymakers in my workplaces in the past, that it was very well received, and yet I was also met with silence and misunderstanding about what my intentions were, and because I also got the question, but you know, what you want to put yourself above the parents? No, I want to put myself on an even level, because that's where we all should be, and that's where everybody who works in the workplace, regardless of what the diversity or inclusion topic is, we should all be on the same level there in any policy that is being made. So I am very much also an advocate for this topic. And yes, you know, just one more thing. I you know, when you talked about, Julia, when you talked about grief and the understanding of grief, or the general misunderstanding of grief in society, that is also still a big thing that we need to work on as a society, where we need to, where in my ideal world, people stop being afraid of grief, because you know, if there's one thing for certain in life, we will all deal with loss, one way or another, whether it's loss of someone that you love, or a family member, or loss of an identity, loss of work, loss of your job, loss of your country, your home, whatever. Every human being suffers losses in their lives. What we are not educated on is how to deal with those losses in a way that they become acceptable. And you know, some people, you know, they really hide behind their grief, and they put up a front, they put up a strong face, they put their mask on, and they hide behind their grief, which impacts their health, which impacts their performance again back in the workplace. And so people go on sick leave and stuff like that. I would love to see that also changing, so that any type of loss or grief, whether it's disenfranchised or not, but that it becomes more acceptable, and that people actually will become more open about it. Because I think already there, if we can start the dialogue there, we can already have a far more better understanding and compassion for what each of us is going through when we are in a grieving process. So that's something else I would really love to see different in both society and the workplace.
Yeah, so true. And those topics are really, really close connected. The topic of childlessness and grief, the grief of losing hopes, of losing dreams, and maybe the imagination of the life that you would like to have and you couldn't. And it's kind of funny, Karin, that you made this example of a meeting where summer holidays were decided, because we have a comment from our follower Sam that says that exactly the story that happened to her husband, and because they don't have kids, they were not allowed to take holidays during summertime, but the only thing they wanted is to have some some time off during summertime too, as well. And it's true that that our idea, the main idea of all this story, is not to deprive parents of their rights or anything that advantages or preferences. It's just to be equal, to have equal opportunities for us as well, and to raise our voice, saying that we exist and we have our needs too.
Absolutely, yeah, because I have a great understanding for the situation that my friends who are friends and family, or my co-workers who are parents. I can actually relate to what I can bring up. I can be understanding. I can't relate in the sense that because I'm not a parent, but I can understand their situation. I can be empathetic. I can be sympathetic. I can be compassionate for their situation. All I'm asking is for that to be also applied to me for my situation. And I think that is one of the biggest struggles that I see also with a lot of members of the Gateway community, but also just and not just within Gateway, but anybody who is dealing with or is a part of the childless community. I think again, to be excluded in such a way that you're not part of the narrative even. And that also that there is so little understanding for what we are, for our situation, and how we would like to be supported and spoken to. As Sharlene already mentioned it, here's what to say and here's what not to say. Those conversations, I would love to have those more.
Yeah. And one thing I would add to that, people sometimes think they know what it's like because they relate being childless to when they were in their 20s and not where we are right now in our life. And so they associate this freedom and this lovely life that they think we're leading. One of my colleagues who came out as a result of me speaking about it had a comment that just hit her to her core. What are you going to do? Go home and eat bonbons, right? So that was a comment that said to her. She said she couldn't even go home and sit on the couch that day. She could not sit down because it was so searing for her. And there is that assumption that what experienced in their 20s being childless is what we experience now being childless. It's very, very different. Getting to middle age and not having your dreamed of children versus when they were. So they think they know, but they don't know. And that's where that false that's not only that, it's like a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of misses in what middle age without children is like.
Yeah, yes, the situation when somebody asks you if you have children, you're in your 20s and you says, not yet. And it's quite another story when you are in your 50s and somebody asks if you have children, you just have to say, no, I don't. Yeah, right. Sharlene, we have also a comment from Sandra who says that she loves the idea of personal obligation days for everyone. And I also know that, for example, in Australia, they introduced a compassionate leave for someone after the loss of pregnancy. So that's another step towards a better future, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to add to that, Julia, also that in the Netherlands, they are now also talking about the same idea, following the example of Australia or New Zealand.
New Zealand.
And also in the Netherlands, they are now talking about compassionate leave after infancy loss or after pregnancy loss. Yeah, so
good.
Change is happening.
Very good. And here we come to Galina, finally, and this is a very, very great, substantial topic that I would like to talk to Galina. And here comes the surprise. I know, Galina, that you actually are a parent. And I would like to ask you, how come did you become interested in this, in the lives of childless people?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me here. I feel very privileged to be able to hear your stories, to share this experience with you. And I had a very difficult time finding people to talk to about it when I was doing my study, because there is this resentment that you all touched upon, parent versus non-parent. And I was the parent who was infringing into a wrong territory. So right now, I do feel very happy that Julia reached out and I'm able to tell my side of the story. Why am I interested in this topic? So the story is really twofold. Back in 2011, I was still in the corporate HR world. I was planning to pursue my corporate career. I was employed at the law firm where coincidentally, we really had younger crowd, younger professionals who either didn't have children yet, the non-parents, right? I really loved how Sharlene said the non-parents. So it's either they didn't have a family yet, they were planning for a family, but what I said back then, I was stuck with a group of about 20-something people whom I had no idea how to cater. Because what I learned in my graduate school and my undergraduate degree, that there is a set of policies that we need to implement for a work-life balance, and you draw from it, right? Like as an HR professional, instead of reinventing the wheel, you go back to the shop and you try to find the policies that will apply to your situation. And I started looking for anything that could cater to people that don't have parental responsibilities. They didn't need the mat leave or pat leave. They didn't need the allowance for childcare. They also didn't need flexibility to pick up their kids. So for me, it became a point where I said, well, I am going to have to reinvent the wheel because it's 2011. And it's not 2021 where we're openly talking about these issues, right? So about a few years later, I decided to pursue my academic career. And my first thought was, well, we know there is a gap between academic literature and the practitioners. We know we're so slow at delivering our findings to you. So I said, there must be something out there. Like these people do exist. I was without a child until 28 years old, right? I worked since I was 18. What happens to them? So much to my surprise, I couldn't find anything either. And at that point, it became my goal. I was already a parent, but it became my goal to give voice to this community in the scholarly literature. I thought that, first of all, we know so little about them that at least I'm going to try to uncover what the lives look like. And I'm also going to try to influence the policymakers through my outreach to the media and my outreach to the channels like that. So that is my story of how I started and where I embarked on 7 years ago, which became really the goal and a very fruitful, great career and an amazing research topic. And today, everything you said, I was just like, I wish I spoke to these women 7 years ago because the journey would be so much easier. You're muted.
Yeah. It's a really kind of strange and rare case when there's someone, a parent, who is like on the other side of the barricades and accidentally become interested in our lives and tries to search for us and to understand us, to help us. This is really this is great, and I believe that you, Galina, is a very compassionate person and a very attentive person, and I hope that the findings of your study will be spread among maybe other communities, and not only universities, but also the commercial organizations, and they will take something from it. Could you share a little bit more about this the study of the struggles of people without children in the workplace, the first study?
Absolutely. So this is my dissertation. I actually decided to write a dissertation on this topic, and currently I have a few manuscripts in review. Not the easiest topic to publish, to be honest. The topic which is considers to be still somewhat a taboo. And the reason it is a taboo is if we don't have enough research in scholarly literature, but yet we have this representation of these people in the media, right? This is very strong representation that stigmatizes people without children. And typically when we look at the person without children, we think they're, or what we call them, is a carefree workaholics. So if we are dealing with people who are carefree workaholics, as Karin mentioned in her story, then how can we as HR, and again, I'm talking from organizational perspective, how can we as HR design our policies to help these people? The statistics clearly show that people without children are going to outgrow people with children by 2031. So from the context of the organization, I thought to myself, well, if I'm going to do this study, I'm going to either find out, confirm the myth that there are, in fact, workaholics, and we're going to have to redesign our approach to these people who are going to become the majority, or I'm going to dispel the myth. And what I found is exactly what you've been talking about in the last hour. So what I found, first of all, is the people without children are not that different from people with children when it comes to managing their work and life. And unlike the popular stigma that these people care for no one and have no life outside of work, their life are filled with myriad of responsibilities. It's taking care of their extended family, of their immediate family, taking care of their nieces and nephews, and all of the other. Volunteering is a huge thing for people without children. And we know nothing about it. We know nothing about it because people, especially in Canada, the topic of not having children is also taboo, right? You never ask people at the interview, do you have a child? So when you come to work for me, I assume you either have a child or you're career driven. So people are not career driven, not all of them. Another thing that we also found in this study later with my co-authors is the couples that we interviewed, only 20% of those couples were actually, in fact, career driven. 80% of those couples had a lot of interest in their domain outside of work. We had couples where somewhat traditional, men was very much career oriented, but women wanted their time to take care of their moms or take care of their dads. It was important to them, but they didn't have access to the policies, right? Because those were not their children. We had, on opposite, we had the couples where women were career oriented, but men had strong care orientation. And that meant that those men fell under the expectation of the ideal worker because they're very vulnerable in their organization. If you don't have children, what else do you have to do except devote your life to the career? So that was a very interesting finding. But most importantly, what we found that the struggle is so strong and the voice is so low. Everything that you talked about, the vacations. I had a doctor telling me that he didn't have a long weekend for 5 years. For 5 years, he was scheduled to be in the ER because he was the one without children. I had people tell me that they're expected to stay longer while their colleagues with, I love the terminology red card, right? The red card. I'm a parent. I have to go. Nobody's going to keep my child in school. Well, I have a pet who might be needing cancer treatments. I'm a single person. Who is going to take care of that pet? So those struggles are real. And I believe that maybe we're a little slower in Canada at talking about it. Maybe we're a little bit more afraid to talk about it. But I think with my study and the work that all of you are doing, I think we're inching so much closer to reaching this justice and that equality that we all deserve, right? Regardless of our parental status. Like, we're humans. And that is to my findings.
Absolutely. Galina, thank you. You told me before, in our interview before this event, that you had kind of issues with finding the participants for your study.
Yeah.
Why? Why did it happen that nobody wanted to show up?
No.
Nobody wanted to speak up?
It was both. It was both because it's a difficult topic to talk about, especially if you're childless. When you're child-free, people often hold it as a pride. It's their decision, but if you're childless, it's much more difficult. That was the first issue. The second issue is, especially when you're in a higher positions and you're easily identifiable, speaking about that again can cause you problems from the career perspective. And thirdly, I had a very difficult time because I was a parent. Because that war, that pitting one against each other, which is really promoted by the top levels of the organization, right? That exists even outside of the organization. somehow parents and non-parents cannot find the common ground. We have nothing to really share. We can coexist together and talk about it. And I think that's the biggest problem, that people would be much more comfortable talking with the researcher who's not a parent because they're in the same boat with them. So I had that struggle, which I overcame, and now I have so many wonderful participants who we keep in touch with. We had a great, the study went a little viral over the national media here in Canada, and that kind of legitimized the voices. And now we have so many more pieces coming out in New York Times, right? Like the rhetoric is changing, and I'm very hopeful.
Yeah, you also told me that the network, the Not Mom network,
Yes.
played a role in this.
Absolutely.
They helped you.
Yes. I had, at some point, when I exhausted all of the contacts I had, I started reaching out, and finding the participants one-on-one through the groups was really difficult. People just would not accept my invitation. So I did reach out to the Not Mom, and I did reach out to the Confessions of a Child-Free Woman on Facebook. And both groups, this is where I got my sample of participants. So I'm very thankful to them for helping me out here.
Such a pity there's an ocean between us, and we didn't know each other yet at that time, and you didn't know about the Gateway Women community that started more or less about that time as well.
But as Karin said and Sharlene said, it's a closed community, right? It's not an open community where you can come in and say, please talk to me. You need to get your way in. And now I know people, and now I'm going to email. I made so many notes for future research.
Great.
Could I add to that, Julia?
Absolutely.
I think, yeah, I'm so glad that you're in Canada. I'm just like, hey. I'm so excited because I think, in the efforts that I've done to date within my workplace, I'm really careful and very conscious. I do not want this to be parent versus non-parent. And I'm very, very conscious, and I'm constantly asking my parent allies like yourself, Galina, within my workplace, how did that come across? Is there anything I said that felt disrespectful or alienating, or you know what I mean? And I'm really very conscious of that, and I want to make sure that that's not how we are approaching things, and how the change makers within Gateway are approaching things. That we're really trying to just broaden the conversation. We're not trying to say our experience is harder than yours, because that's what happens. You get into this back
like
and
a war.
Fighting, right? That's what it's called. Who's harder? Who's got life harder, right? And we get into this hierarchy of, and it's just like, no, my hard is different than your hard, and I respect your hard, but please understand and hear my hard too, right? And it's just trying to, from different perspectives, and listen to understand instead of listen to argue with. Right? So that listening to understand really helps us, so we can just widen the net. That's what we're trying to do. We're widening the net to capture everyone's choices, just like we do with some of the other more prominent diversity issues, right? The LGBTQ, two-spirited, non-binary, all the things that are starting to, to widen that community. It's the same thing with us. It's just trying to widen the net. And I really am promoting that within the change makers, in terms of trying to say there are all kinds of non-parents, and we just want to add to the conversation and educate about our slice of the pie, right? So,
If I would like to comment on Sharlene's. I think one of the very important things that we're seeing right now, especially after the Facebook episode of employees without children voicing their opinion, we're now bringing to the table the fact that it's now becoming a retention issue, right? It's not, the inclusion is not just to make somebody happy. The inclusion is about you losing profit down the line because people are brave enough to walk away now. And I think this is what's really making it so much more loud in Canada, where we're showing employers the numbers. So organizations like yours, academics, and then the data, that's what I think is going to bring the change, which is already happening in Europe. Well, somewhat. Better than here.
Karin, do you think there exist any good for all decisions with this regard? Like in Canada, we just heard the situation. So what about Europe?
Well, I would love to challenge Galina on the remark that Europe is a little bit further ahead. I'm not sure. Perhaps there's more talk about it, but at the same time, what I'm also noticing, especially with the topic of childlessness in the workplace, is that how conservative companies still are, and maybe it's not so much conservatism, but actually how much pro-natalism is still at the forefront of policymakers, even in the workplace. I loved what you shared, that by 2031, the balance is going to flip. And I actually think that a lot of companies, a lot of policymakers are not aware enough of those numbers and how that will impact the policies in the workplace and how that will impact the needs of employees. Yes, companies, there's lots of talk about work-life balance. There's lots of talk about, inclusivity and diversity. But at the same time, I'm finding that the focus within the diversity and inclusion discussions is still too much focused on what the mainstream media is also showing, rather than actually, so it is the LGBTQ community, which of course they need to be heard. The whole gender discussion, the racial bias, the racial unconsciousness that is that's coming up. So all of those things, they are being talked about. Yet, if in Europe the numbers are 1 in 5. Is going to be 1 in 5 women who reach the age of 45 will be a childless woman. That's 20% of women. So and then I don't even know the numbers about childless men at this moment in time. But they are. If that would also be 20, maybe even higher, 30%, that could potentially be 20-30% of your workforce. Mm-hmm. So the academic research needs to be done. The numbers need to be shared. It is so important.
And my point has been that the childless issue intersects with all those other diversity groups. Whether it's disability, LGBTQ, women's issues, like the intersection is there between all the different diversity issues. And that my tagline is make inclusion inclusive. And to bring some of these on the fringe areas, they all start grassroots, right? Every single issue starts grassroots, and it's the people who are most affected who have to raise their voices and say, hey, we're here, we matter, and we need to step out and start talking about this. And stop making it taboo. So if we feed into the taboo, then it's going to stay on the fringe. But the more we speak about it, the more we raise the issue, the more we talk about the intersectionality of disability and childlessness, and race and childlessness, and all the things, LGBTQ and childlessness that we can start to in a bit of a different way.
Yeah, Cecilia, did you want to say something?
Just comment quickly with regards to the research that you shared, Galina, because it now there's music in the background somewhere. So so for me, it was really intensive and moving to listen to your research, because because normally we hear from each other as our own experiences, but they are all anecdotal. But listening to real research makes a huge impact for me. So I really think we somehow all, because I don't think there's any research going on, not in Denmark, not in Scandinavia. So I think we somehow, that would be great if we could get more research getting going other places in the world as well, because it makes a different impact with numbers and research than just our stories. And as you said, we are very much still in close communities, but not opening up about it. So thank you, Galina. It's really moving to hear the research.
Thank you very much. Thank you. There, I have big plans, and my career will be devoted to that. So once we got to North America, we are moving to a little bit of Europe, and this will be everywhere. And thank you very much. I really appreciate the comments.
Galina, I'm going to have to reach out to you.
Absolutely. I'm going to reach out to each and every one of you.
Excellent.
And we need to continue this important work.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Very good.
I agree with Cecilia.
I also hope that we will have another opportunity to meet all together and with other participants as well, and to talk again about this, because every time we talk about it, there's some new points that come out, and that we can work on and collaborate, I hope. So thank you all, dear ladies, for having raised these important issues and for having participated today in this chat. And as I said, I hope we'll have many more opportunities to meet again and speak about childlessness and other issues connected with it. And thank you to our viewers and for the comments. And I hope they will keep going, keep coming, and we will have other participants next time. And I just wanted to let you know that the next event that I'm planning to do here on this channel will be in the Italian language, and we'll speak about the psychological issues about being childless, and we'll speak about psychologists and life coaches. So thank you, ladies, again, and you all have a great day, and speak to you soon again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
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 Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.